Hello and welcome to Raider HQ After Dark. I am your host Raider, working during the day. Today's video I wanted to talk about gastroesophageal reflux disease and the current post May 19th, 2024 edition of it. Now, I want to tell you that this particular disability, gastroesophageal reflux disease, is heavy on the medical side. The medical evidence determines how we get there, so I want to put that up front. And you have to understand that this particular, and I'll share my screen, this particular change to the rating scheduler went about 1,000% more into medical procedures than it was historically. It used to be based upon symptoms, but now it's based upon medical procedures. So it maximizes at 80% and at 0%, basically no symptoms but a current diagnosis um, at 0. But it does have a lot of notes associated with it. So when you're reviewing for conditions like this to see if you should be 10, 30, 50, 80, whatever, you want to come down here and get these definitions because I'm going to be upfront with you and say that the individuals, the raters, who are reviewing your gastroesophageal reflux disease are they themselves, for the most part, not medical professionals. Okay? So they will come down here and they will see, like if I was reviewing this, whenever I first reviewed it, is this is so for 0% a diagnosis would get me there. For 10%, I have to show a documented history of esophageal strictures that require daily medication. So if you're on medications but you're asymptomatic, 10%. Okay? That's what that is. Now, when we get to 30%, documented history of recurrent esophageal strictures causing dysphagia, which requires dilatation, dilation. Oh, dilate. Yeah, okay. Dilatation, whatever. No more than 2 times per year. So if you have 1 or 2 times that you require some kind of dilation of your esophagus, but no more than 2 times, 30% is the maximum that you can get. But then you come down here to the notes. Sometimes people will go, well, wait a minute, I had 2 times this year. Findings must be documented by barium swallow. Like, you have to have your conditions confirmed by diagnostic imaging, is what this says. Non-gastrointestinal complications of the procedure should be rated under the appropriate system. So this talks about secondaries. So you can potentially get secondaries associated with complications due to the dilatation procedure. So keep this in mind. This is something that historically has not been part of the GERD process, are unintended secondaries. So this is relatively new based upon the May 19th, 2024 changes. Keep this in mind. More to come on these. I'll do some research and see what some of the common secondary side effects are that we've been kind of granting for. I haven't come across one yet, but it looks like it was enough to note it, so they expect it to happen. So I'll run this down for you guys. This diagnostic code applies to, but not limited to, and then this particularly gives you the scope of conditions that could fall under this. This is mostly telling the rater what could happen here, but the rater will be limited by the stricture element of this. So if there are no strictures, then the maximum that you can get for these conditions would be 0% because the strictures is written in here explicitly. And we have to follow the letter of the entry of the CFR for when we grant. Recurrent esophageal strictures is defined as the inability to maintain the target esophageal diameter beyond 4 weeks after the target diameter has been achieved. Okay. This is a cheeky little little note here that says for the recurrent aspect, and I'm going to try to find. So for recurrent. So 30% and higher, in order to meet the criteria of recurrent esophageal strictures, note 4 must be true. This is how the raters review things. Like, you might say that you have, um, that you meet the requirements, but if your inability to maintain the diameter beyond 4 weeks was not met, like if you're able to maintain the diameter, then you don't have recurrent strictures, right? So keep this in mind. If you go to your doctor, like if you're trying to go to your doctor and kind of review your GERD and see if, you meet criteria for a next higher level, please have them talk about this. This is going to be a claim killer right here. Because if the examiner doesn't talk about it, the VA examiner doesn't talk about it, and your doctor doesn't talk about it, then it doesn't exist. So you can't get 30. That's what this means. So it would behoove you to no end to get this note 4, which should be in red. I mean, it should be highlighted beyond all recognition, because if your rater's paying attention, then they're watching this like a hawk. And unless this is a yes, you can't get a 30. So, and then note 5, refractory esophageal strictures is defined as the inability to achieve target esophageal diameter despite receiving no fewer than 5 dilatation sessions performed at 2-week intervals. Okay, so let's go up to refractory. So refractory starts at 50. Okay, so we have a further discriminatory, I want to call it discriminatory, but a further requirement to get the 50%. So not only do you have the recurrent criteria of you must meet this requirement in order to be 30%, for 50 and 80, you also have to meet this diagnostically proven criteria. So this is where note 4 and 5 is where you start to see a further clamping down of the VA, that they want, like, you have to like basically be pigeonholed in this very specific set of criteria and circumstances in order for you to start meeting these criteria. And why I say that is I look for specific words. Recurrent, right? Recurrent starts here and goes all the way up to the top. So the recurrent criteria must be satisfied in addition to the stuff that's put into this particular thing. So dilatation of using steroids at least 1 time per year, esophageal treatment. It has so many restrictions that you have to have the Goldilocks of symptoms in order to get it. So recurrence right here, but recurrent goes all the way up. Then you have refractory. This is how quality review will review it and basically overturn any grant that doesn't meet the criteria, is because refractory starts here but also includes this. So you have to make sure that in addition, and I'll just go for refractory right now, in addition to these statements right here, you must also satisfy these statements, and you must also satisfy these statements in order to get 50% for your GERD. In order to get 80% for your GERD, you must satisfy the same thing. Note 4, Note 5, and all of these in here. So with at least, and then one of these. Because the way that rating works is with at least one. So that means that in addition, I have to do at least one of these things. But the notes also count. So whenever it defines a word, I also have to consider it. I know it's convoluted. I know it's crazy. But you would not know this unless I told you. Not a lot of people are talking about this and how, like, what it would take to get 50 and 80. So I'm going to also switch over here to the DBQ. Now, when we're going through the DBQ, this is going to matter right here, So you want like whatever's checked here matters. As we saw, I know I'm kind of flipping around. This code can apply to these other conditions as well, so you don't necessarily need GERD individually checked, but it helps if you do have GERD checked, right here, GERD checked. But you can also, a couple of these can also count under the 7206 DC code. So you want to have GERD checked, obviously. Date of diagnosis is going to matter. Well, it can matter for effective dates, and we're kind of over a year past, so I doubt. Like, if you had a supplemental claim, and let's say you filed a supplemental claim for GERD prior to the May 19th, 2024 change in the VASRD, the VA scheduler for this, if you had a continuously pursued supplemental claim and the date of your diagnosis was before the May 19th, 2024, and you get granted on supplemental, then you can still technically qualify for the historical criteria, which is easier to get a higher rating. Um, if your date of diagnosis is essentially before that change and you have a continuously pursued supplemental claim. So it's not too late to still qualify for the historical criteria as long as those two very specific things are met. So let me go down here and then, I kind of do this doesn't matter, doesn't matter, doesn't matter, doesn't matter thing. The signs and symptoms begin to matter. So without daily symptoms, well, let's go yes. This is going to be your 0%. Okay. So if we go back here, actually, let me stay here and I've got a different screen. So I will pull this up for 7206. Yeah. So without daily symptoms or requiring medication is the 0%. The documented history of strictures that require daily medicine. So this is going to be, these two are going to be 0%. Requiring daily, why is this not functioning? So requiring daily medication right here to control dysphagia, this is going to be your 10%. So if you were doing a private DBQ, this box being checked is 10%. Okay. Documented history of esophageal strictures indicate has esophageal strictures been recurrent or refractory? So this is going to be a two-parter. So the history of documented esophageal strictures is the language for both 10 and 30%. So the requiring of medication and this one, God, I wish it would let me check. Why will it let me? Okay, that's just weird. So these two right here are needed to be checked in order to get the 10%. And then when you go to the 30%, this is the one that, like, both of these two actually need to be checked right here in order for the 30%. And then you have to have 3 times or more. Well, no more than 2 times is going to get you the 30%, as long as you also have the criteria for that's within the notes section, for recurrent. And then the 50%, same thing. Both of these need to be checked. And then this will be, stupid thing, 3 times per year. More than 3 times. Well, I guess I'll just pull my thing over here. So this is for the 30% is the no more than 2 times per year. And then the 50% is one of the following must be true 3 or more times per year. So what happens is this particular checkbox is going to be the difference between 30% and 50%. Okay. Now, there's also additional things down here that can be contribute to that. Like the steroids portion is also part of the 50. There's a 1, 2, and 3 option, and this particular question talks about a couple of them. So yeah, this portion right here will get you to at least the 50%. And then when we start talking about the 80%, these additional questions down here, coupled with this particular question being more than 3 times, having everything checked correctly for the 50%, meeting 50% criteria, and having the aspiration checked or the undernutrition checked, these will get you the 80%. Okay. But once again, this is going to be based upon factually true. Like your doctor can't just say these things because these have to be supported by uh, diagnostic imaging in some instances and treatment records themselves. Like you have to have shown that you went to the doctor more than 2 times because this is not something you can do at home, right? Some of these manual dilation techniques require you to go in for a day's surgery. So you have to show the evidence in order for the rater to sign off on it, that it's substantially complete. So after this, we also have some Barrett's esophageal symptoms, which is not necessarily for GERD itself, but it can be. Surgeries, like these things have to line up. Did you have procedures? Did you have surgeries? Um, everything has to be dress right dress. And if it's not dress right dress, then it's going to cause, like in the instance of a private DBQ, it's going to cause your private DBQ to be suspect and be conflicting, have conflicting evidence in it, in which they're more likely to burn it and send you for a VA examination. We also have the esophageal hernia situation. Tumors and neoplasms. So this section is mostly for cancers of the esophagus, not relevant to the GERD at all. And then physical scars. This is important to infer. Like if you have a scar that's external. I mean, I guess I'm not up on esophageal procedures, but if you had a scar in which they had to go externally in and do something related to your GERD, then this would be where we would infer the scar. And then disfigurements. This is where the diagnostic testing matches up. So on private DBQs, what the rater wants to see is we want to see that the examiner cites the evidence that they used in order to check the boxes. This has to be done. If this is not done, then that calls into question how the examiner got to the conclusion that they got to. So we're going to look, it starts getting the eye of Sauron on your private DBQ because uh, why didn't okay, how did you get to that conclusion that they have the strictures if you didn't, if there's no CT, no MRI, no, no nothing on there. And then functional impact. I would like to talk, I should do a video on functional impact. Functional impact itself should not raise the issue of IU for your claim. We do not use the functional impact section. Well, VS raters that are, been doing it for longer than 2 years should not and would not use the functional impact section to infer IU because it's not an accurate assessment. It doesn't meet the criteria of an economic impact assessment, so it doesn't meet the criteria. It can raise the issue to the rater, and the rater can go, okay, well, I'm gonna review the evidence and then come to a conclusion as to whether or not IU is at issue. But sometimes what I see is people will get an attorney, and the attorney will go, yeah, I'm appealing this decision because IU wasn't raised to issue by the rater. Cool. Not happening. Like it doesn't matter. Like that's not the way we raise IU. Right? There's a certain set of criteria that needs to happen. There has to be a certain, like the veteran has to say that their disabilities impact their job. They have to be unemployed. They have to meet the scheduler requirements for us to raise because the VBA does not raise things to issue just to deny them. So if you don't meet criteria, I'm not going to raise it to issue because I can't do that. I would get an error because I can't raise something to issue just to deny you. Now, we're going to come down here to the bottom. So I'm going to just talk about private DBQ stuff here. Examiner's signature, examiner's printed name with their credentials after it, cool. Area of expertise, cool. Date signed, NPI number, medical license number, cool. Examiner's phone number, cool. This is where I talk about how all of this must match up with their NPI index. Okay, so that matters. All of it has to match up, or else you're going to get them burning your claim for fraud or burning your private DBQ for fraud. So, because they'll be like, oh, doesn't match. Veteran gets exam, and that's how they do it. But all right, so this is my brief overview of gastroesophageal reflux disease. I hope that it was I hope it was at least informative. I know I probably didn't go over it to the degree that people want to, but you have to understand that the raters are not medical professionals. They just review the laws and regulations. And we need, I mean, we're going off of what the literal translation of this text is for these notes. This tells me I need this. This tells me I need that. This tells me I need this. So if you don't have this and that, or if you have, like, let's say your doctor does a procedure that's not listed here, you need to have your doctor explain what that procedure is closest to on this list, because we are not going to go out on a limb as a rater. I'm not going to infer that this procedure means that same procedure over there. I need a doctor to tell me that. I will not go out on a limb for that. No rater will go out on a limb for that. That's an instant error to the face. Nobody's doing that, especially not when October's rolling around soon and the quality gets reset. So anyway, that's about all I have for you on this video. If you found it interesting or if you like this type of video, please let me know and I will just start cranking them out for everything. And that's about all I got for you. Raider out.